Well, thank you so very much. When I listen to all these smart people say the wonderful things they were saying earlier, I thought, God, what an anticlimax when I finally get here. But he just sets the scene. He told you that I was a confused individual you can't categorize. He's not the first person to do that. I tell you, my children, their biggest trouble is how to introduce their father. What does your father do for a living? My 7-year-old comes a couple of, months ago and said, Daddy, what do you really do? And, because I teach business, I think, okay, I usually tell people that the strategy of your company is not clear if your 7-year-old cannot understand it. And so I thought, how do I get this 7-year-old to understand my strategy? In the end, I thought, let me tell her that I'm smart. Claire, is that? Have you heard of a company called Honda? I've seen some cars that are called Honda cars. I said, but haven't you seen a motorcycle that is also a Honda? Oh, I don't know. I don't see motorcycles around. Well, there are motorcycles that are made by Honda. There are also chainsaws. There are all kinds of things. And she says, okay, so what does all of this come? Well, you see, this company is actually a very, very focused company. What is focus? Well, you see, it makes this thing that goes into a motor car, goes into a motorcycle. This company is an engine company. It just makes engines, but the engines do different things. They cut down. That is a teacher. He, looks for all kinds of platforms to be a teacher, including the political arena, on television. That you're really confusing me now. So I think the challenge of talking to a group like this about what has made a difference in my life and trying to inspire a group like this is that I'm actually looking to be inspired to understand myself. So, here's the opportunity to help me. Let me say a thing or two about why I do all these things that I do and how I came down this track. As a young 7-8-year-old myself, I was an altar boy in a small town in northern Nigeria called Gusau. At the time, John F. Kennedy was president of the United States of America. He was the first Catholic to be president of the United States. And these American Catholic priests found their ultimate victim, this young altar boy who woke up every morning, rode his bicycle about 4 or 5 miles to come and get the sacristy ready and serve at Mass. And so they gave me a Kennedy overdose. I read everything that I could read at that age that Kennedy said. And so I was quoting these Kennedy things, and they were coming out from my ears and everywhere. And so I kind of grew up believing that I could change the world. I believed everything that I was told by those American priests. Well, several years later, as an undergraduate at University of Nigeria, I began to try to change the world around me. Now, first thing, Nigerian foreign policy was not going exactly the way I thought it should be going. I was a 19-year-old undergraduate at University of Nigeria, had run for office, was part of the Students' Union, and I thought, we should get the foreign minister of Nigeria to come here and explain why Nigeria was taking this track in Angola and in Mozambique and all of that. And so I go off to Lagos to try and meet the foreign minister of Nigeria, young colonel at the time called Joseph Namven Garba. I get up to his secretary's office, and I'd like to see the foreign minister because I want... You like to do what? I said, look, I'm a student union leader from the University of Nigeria, Okay, you know what? Now go back to the university, write a letter to the Dean of Student Affairs, have the Dean of Student minute it to the Vice Chancellor, and have him minute it to... I said, to God first before it comes. And she said, oh, you're that clever? Yes, indeed. Let it go to God before it comes. And so I thought, what should I do next? So I went downstairs. I said to the concierge in this building, I said, when does the... Oh, well, he's on his way. In fact, that's the advance team arriving. I said, good. And the team pulls up, his motorcade pulls up, and he gets out of the car. And I said, Colonel Garba, I disagree with your position on Angola. And he goes, who said that? I said, me. He said, why? And I begin to tell him why I disagree, and we're talking, and we walk past his secretary and walk straight into his office. When General Garba passed a few years ago, I wrote a tribute to Garba. Former Foreign Minister Olise Meka said he saw the tribute and said, Pat and Garba are not age mates. What tribute, what would connect them? And then he read the story and he said, great story. Garba and I became friends for the rest of his life. Because when I walked through and came to his office and had that argument with him, he decided he was going to come to the University of Nigeria. Then nobody believed me that he was going to come. The vice chancellor, And then 3 days before he was supposed to come, everything just came unraveling. There's a coup attempt in the country. Dimka kills General Mohammed. And there's a state of emergency. At that time, they had not even arrested Dimka. And so we couldn't communicate with Lagos, couldn't communicate with... And I said, they didn't believe me. Now they'll say, we knew he wasn't coming. I couldn't reach anybody. I went to the division commander in Enugu, and nobody knew anything. At the point, the division commander said, just go to the airport and wait. He may show up. So I went to the airport, and a few minutes after I got to the airport, a police jet lands. And out comes his brother, who is his ADC, and General Garba was there. And we drove to Nsukka. And when they announced in Enugu that he had arrived on radio, the vice chancellor started running all over the place because nobody had prepared for his coming. And so, back in those days, I got a sense for the fact that if you believe it, you can make anything happen. It's about you and what you believe you can do, because they will always try to tell you it is impossible. And so I discovered something else at the University of Nigeria. Actually, I wasn't sure I wanted to go to university, because the fashionable thing to be was an airline pilot when I was leaving high school. And I thought, the finest cars in Lagos, the best girls, looked at the airline pilots. I thought, that's what I'd like, for a life, So anyhow, my father played these tricks on me, and I ended up in the university. Somewhere along the line, something happened. Just after the war, back in those days, the university had several libraries that were, they got generous donation of books from around the world, since the University of Nigeria had lost so many books. But the libraries were shut because the university could not afford the librarians. My head of department said, organize yourselves so that you can man the library. And as students, we are usually very selfish, so nobody volunteered, and the library stayed shut. And one day, I had I don't know what it was that happened to me. I walked up to the head department and I said, I volunteered to man the library. And it was really, really funny because I was the least serious student in the department. What a volunteer. Then I got the key of the library and my life changed. Because I had nothing else to do while the library was open. So I decided to read everything that was inside. and that determined a number of things. So I went off to grad school immediately. I left, was in the United States. And while I was in grad school, of course, I tried to grow myself and then talk about all the encouragement to come home. I left the United States the very day my PhD thesis was accepted in 1982. I didn't take the risk of trying to work for a month to buy those few things. So I made remarkable progress. I arrived in the United States with a suitcase. I left with 2 suitcases. 100% improvement in my condition. So I returned to Nigeria, and I wanted to ensure that everybody knew that I was going to change this world around me. And of course, they thought all kinds of things. But they had no choice. They had to listen to me because I had learned to write. And so every day, I got on everybody's case. And so started a challenge. And ultimately, I had to determine through the various platforms that were available to me how I could best affect the world around me. In the end, like I was trying to explain to my 7-year-old, my basic business has been playing business angel. How can I make a difference in this environment? How can I help people create wealth? And I've played that for many years, and that's why we talk of boards. I have been in the middle of the founding of quite a number of business enterprises, many of which have gone on to be very successful, a few of which have failed dramatically. But late last year, a friend of mine who's done remarkably well in the entertainment business, Ben More Bruce, came to my home. And he said to me, "Why do you hate money?" I thought, do I? I thought I was the ultimate representation. I thought I was the evangelist of free enterprise. How could you think that I hate money? He said, no. I can count all the people who have become multimillionaires because of what you've done with them, for them. But you tend not to. And I said to him, there is something much bigger than the size of your bank account. And it made me write a book, The Business Angel as a Missionary. Because really, we are not going to be able to transform society until we can create new opportunities for people. And one of the arenas that must open up is for people to get people to believe in themselves and know that they can truly create wealth. In a country where we are predominantly economic rent seekers, I was asked a few weeks ago to talk about political parties in Nigeria, and I said, the problem with the PDP, the reason that we must break the PDP, we must destroy the PDP if Nigeria is going to make progress, is that the PDP, very simply, is an elite platform for accommodation in the sharing of economic rent. That is all that it is. I'm very honest. And that is the antithesis of nation building. Because you don't create wealth, you don't build people, you just, okay, David Mark, supply that person let's share this, let's get that. No society can make progress in a sustained way with that mindset, and we need to change it. But very quickly, because I've been active in business, playing this role, sometimes I get to realize that unless something is done about the political arena, all the effort that you make in trying to create enablers for business people will not really come to the possibilities that are available. And so I thought I should be a citizen. Citizenship behavior is one of the things lacking, and I hear that come from many of the talks. We don't hold people in public office accountable. And so I worked to play my role as a citizen in so many different ways and became known as an activist. Oh, dear goodness, I didn't plan to be an activist. I just wanted to be a citizen. In 1993, one of those particularly painful moments, we'd gone to the polls, we all voted, we thought it was done, we're now going to get some movement in whatever direction it was we had agreed in the vote. And I'm in Boston attending some meeting, and a Ugandan friend runs up to me and says, you Nigerians, whenever we think we're about to make progress, you set us back. I said, what? That's how I found out the elections of that year were annulled. And I got so angry, I left the meeting and went to my room. And I wrote a piece that was published in The Guardian that was titled, We Must Say Never Again. And that piece led to the founding of the Concerned Professionals, which most people remember as perhaps the most articulate resistance to military rule during that period in Nigeria. So it wasn't that I wanted to be an activist, I just wanted to be a citizen. And that is part of a problem that we have in most of Africa. Far too many of us are trying to protect that turf, that comfort zone, that we don't try to be citizens. And because we don't, as educated middle class people, try to be citizens, the space is shrinking and progress is not taking place. So the challenge that is there for me is the challenge of being a citizen and continuing to try and affect people's life in the areas that I have some skill, some competence. I think that and many of the speakers here have made this point, the greatest investment that you can make is in another human being. All the investments that you can make in stock markets and all those can come crashing. But if you can change a life, you can change a country. And I think that the benefits, the value that flow to you for that investment in a human being cannot be quantified. Too often, many of us are looking for our gratification right now. And that is part of the challenge that we have in Africa, that people are not investing in others because they're looking for instant gratification. That deferred gratification that comes from building people who ultimately will transform, I think, is what we need to get people to focus on. I look at the situation in Nigeria, and I must begin to round up. Nigeria is the arena that I've played at, even though I've been active in many parts of Africa. But Nigeria particularly, in that environment, I was asked, for example, to project where things are going to be 50 years from now. Celebrated 50 years of Nigeria. Most people were looking backwards. I was asked to look forward next 60 years. And I had three scenarios. One scenario, terrible, frightening scenario, violence, Boko Haram spreading in northern Nigeria. It's really spreading. Some states in the southeast have been, very much conceded to armed robbers and kidnappers and Niger Delta and all of that. So you could get a road to Somalia. Another road we can travel is continue the present. More elite accommodation, gas will bring in more revenues, but look at peak oil. Look at what's at the most 30, 35, 40 years Nigeria is out, and the elite accommodation cannot continue to take place. But the third scenario, which is my favorite scenario, which is most likely if those of us here just commit a little, is that Nigeria. I was in India in 1991 when Rao, this old man with nothing to lose, named a certain finance minister, who's the current prime minister, and India began to make these moves. If you look at Nigeria today, economic growth is at 7.5% per annum in spite of government, not because of government, in spite of government. That's what the World Bank report says, look at the rains and what is done and agriculture coming. You look at what is happening just from the natural genius of people. If you could have government that focuses on doing the right things, Baton is here. If the work that he's doing on power could move us a little further, Nigeria could very easily be growing at 18, 19, 20% per annum. And Nigeria could be the next China. And I believe that is the future that awaits us. Thank you.